Sometimes, the person we judge in silence carries a story greater than we could ever imagine. And on one ordinary flight, a quiet mother sitting by the window proved to an arrogant CEO, and to everyone on board, that true power doesn't always wear a suit. Chapter 1: The Quiet Mother and the Arrogant CEO. The plane buzzed with the usual pre-flight chatter. Passengers were finding their seats, adjusting luggage, and scrolling through their phones. By the window in row 14 sat Maria, a quiet woman in her late 30s, holding her small son's hand. She had kind eyes, tired but gentle, and wore a plain sweater with no jewelry or brand labels. She looked like any ordinary mother, simple, soft-spoken, and invisible in the crowd. Next to her, occupying the aisle seat, was Richard Bennett, a CEO in his 50s. He was sharply dressed in a navy suit, gold cufflinks glinting under the cabin lights. He had the kind of presence that demanded attention, and he was used to getting it. Richard didn't notice Maria at first, until her son accidentally dropped a toy car onto his expensive leather shoe. Richard picked up the toy, smirked, and said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Careful, kid, mommy might not be able to afford a replacement if you lose this one." A few people chuckled politely. Maria just smiled faintly and thanked him, pulling her son closer. She wasn't confrontational. She never was. Years of hardships had taught her that silence often spoke louder than words. But Richard wasn't finished. As the flight went on, he made little comments, each sharper than the last. He complained about her taking too long when reaching for her bag in the overhead. He scoffed when she softly hummed to calm her son. He even turned to another passenger and said, "Planes should really have a section for, well, people like her. Noisy kids, struggling mothers. Some of us actually have important business to focus on." Maria said nothing. She simply looked out the window, her fingers gently stroking her son's hair as he dozed off. What no one on that plane knew was that Maria was far from ordinary. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline. And the man mocking her was about to discover a truth that would shake him to his core. Chapter 2: The Captain's Emergency Call. Midway through the flight, turbulence struck. The seatbelt signs lit up, and the plane jolted violently. Gasps filled the cabin. Even Richard gripped his armrest tightly, his smugness vanishing. A moment later, the intercom buzzed. The captain's voice was calm but urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing unexpected difficulties with our systems. We have a situation and will need immediate assistance from a qualified aviation engineer on board. If anyone has expertise, please identify yourself to the crew immediately." The cabin fell silent. Passengers glanced around nervously, but no one moved. Richard muttered under his breath, "Of course, we're all at the mercy of luck now." Then, to everyone's shock, Maria quietly unbuckled her seatbelt. She whispered to her son, kissed his forehead, and handed him a toy. Standing with steady grace, she raised her hand and said softly to the flight attendant, "I can help. I'm an aerospace engineer." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. Richard's jaw dropped. Within minutes, Maria was escorted to the cockpit. The door shut behind her. The rest of the passengers waited in tense silence. Richard stared at the empty seat beside him, the realization settling heavy in his chest. He had mocked this woman, this mother, without knowing that she might be the only reason they would all survive. Inside the cockpit, Maria quickly scanned the system reports, her mind sharp and focused. Years ago, she had been one of the youngest lead engineers at a world-renowned aviation company. She had designed safety protocols, advised on system redundancies, and trained pilots on emergency overrides. But she had stepped away from that career when her husband passed away, choosing instead to dedicate her life to raising her son. Now, with the captain watching anxiously, Maria's calm voice guided the crew through a series of steps. Switches were flipped, codes were entered, and stabilizers adjusted. After what felt like an eternity, the turbulence eased. The plane steadied. Applause erupted from the cabin. When Maria emerged, passengers clapped, cheered, and some even stood in awe. Her son beamed with pride. Richard, red-faced and humbled, stood too, but his applause was slower, heavier, laced with shame. As Maria returned to her seat, Richard leaned toward her, his voice low and trembling. I owe you an apology. I was wrong about you." Maria smiled faintly, her eyes soft but resolute. "Sometimes, Mr. Bennett, the most important people aren't the loudest. They're the ones quietly carrying the weight of others, until the world finally sees them." The rest of the flight passed in reverent silence. And when the plane landed safely, Everyone disembarked with gratitude in their eyes, for the quiet mother who wasn't so ordinary after all. Final message, inspiring ending for audience. This story reminds us that humility is the greatest wisdom. We should never judge someone by their appearance, their silence, or their struggles. Because sometimes, the person we underestimate the most is the very one who could save our lives.